everything up later. Who will Texas, OU, and the SEC, whatever that is, 25, whatever year, of those two schools, or whoever is going to be a part of, we know the 12 Big 12 schools outside of Texas and Oklahoma. Which of that group, the 12 who retain, who are the new Big 12, or Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC, which has a better chance of getting in the college playoff first?
The Big 12.
Yeah.
First of all, you're talking about 12 teams compared to 2, and you're talking about what appears to be the competitive nature of the Big 12 compared to trying to beat up the teams that you have to beat to get to the Big 12 or to win the SEC or get to the playoff.
It's not even the 12 teams versus the 2 because Kansas isn't sniffing a playoff anytime soon, and there's some others that I feel pretty confident you can say, like, yeah, they're not going to the playoff anytime. Like, I don't think West Virginia's going to the playoff anytime soon. I think TCU's not going to the playoff anytime soon. Like, maybe they'll show us something this year that you think differently, but as of right now, I wouldn't expect that anytime soon. I mean, the candidates would be Oklahoma State, they'd be Baylor, and they'd be,
Cincinnati, we're just in it.
Yeah, Cincinnati. I mean, yeah, and now I'm having to think about those schools as well. But, I'd definitely go with the Big 12 schools versus, having to play Alabama and Auburn and LSU and A&M and all these schools. I mean, you could have a great year, still lose 3 games. And that's going to be, I think, the big difference for Oklahoma and Texas is, those great teams that you had, you could kind of run through the Big 12, but, those great teams aren't necessarily going to run through that week after week SEC schedule. So, yeah, I'd definitely go the Big 12 on that bet.
That was something that was brought up, by the way, in the 365 chat room as well. From Matthew Braz, Texas or Oklahoma, I think, has a better chance. From Jacob, well, do we know which team going to be what part of the West or the East? Are there pods? That may have something to do with it as well for Oklahoma and Texas once they do enter the SEC. We don't have any idea.
But I also think that Oklahoma and Texas are going to have to – there's going to be a couple season buffer zone of adjusting to the style of play and who they're seeing and, there's going to be and look, that might be an advantage to some extent for them to win some games because these teams haven't seen each other. They don't know all that stuff. But I think there's going to be a longer period of adjustment for Texas and Oklahoma, which leads me to agree with Craig in that, the Big 12 teams can pretty much, especially the good ones, can kind of keep doing what they're doing without having to go to Norman or Austin.
They don't play them anymore.
Yeah, they don't play them anymore. So, they don't have to go to Norman or Austin anymore. They keep rolling on. Look, I'll just use Baylor as an example. Baylor against Texas A&M, and I'm not trying to pump up Texas A&M here, but it's no coincidence that Baylor's win total went up when a team that didn't beat but twice in 30 years left the league.
But
when Nebraska left too.
If they would have played them in the last 10 or 12 years.
Yeah. But I'm talking about in that immediate, that little pocket of time where they got better right after A&M left, it certainly helped because they didn't have to go to a place that was a bugaboo for them. Nebraska was gone, who used to come in here and beat them all the time. Yeah. So there's 2 teams gone that used to beat you all the time.
I agree. That's absolutely agree. But in the last 10 or 12 years, most years they've been better than both of those teams.
Yeah, I'm not trying to talk about that. I'm just talking about
they would have still not won some games.
The immediate balloon popping of, okay, these are 2 places that it's just a wasteland.
Yes.
And everybody has them no matter who you are. Texas is Kansas. Look, Texas might get another win every year in the SEC because they don't have to go to the state of Kansas anymore. I don't know. I mean, they've struggled lately.
TCU didn't have much of a buffer, did they? When did TCU have their big 2014?
After they've been in the league and not been very good for a couple of years. They weren't very good. And then all of a sudden they got Trayvon Boykin and the big offense to pair with the defense and the whole Baylor TCU thing. They didn't just swoop in and start playing at a Big 12 championship level. But
they also had just lost a team that went unbeaten and won the Rose Bowl, and they had some transition.
Well, I mean, we can do that for every team. And but bottom line is, if we were really dissected by Colorado and blah, 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 basically, 2 great teams are leaving. So that automatically makes it easier. Now, other teams could rise, of course, but there's a billion caveats we can use for this example. But bottom line is, do you think Texas and Oklahoma are going to get to a national championship before any team in the Big 12? No, I don't. I think the Big 12 has an easier path in their new standing without Texas and Oklahoma to have a team go unbeaten and get there versus Texas and Oklahoma, who don't have to go unbeaten. They can lose probably, at least a game, maybe 2. Yep. But even then, that's stretching it. And right now, the way they're constructed, they're not going through the Big 12 unscathed. So why am I going to believe that they're going to go through the SEC without dropping more than a game or two in the very immediate start of it? That's just where I am.
One thing might also be the timing of when the college football expansion, if it ever does take
then,
place.
yeah, that changes
Then
it.
that changes everything. Then both would have a very, very good time. Matthew Bras, Big 12 will have to make a concerted effort to schedule non-conference games of strength. Well, Matthew, that's been going on, and that is something that's not new. Everyone's starting to do that, including Baylor, which, of course, took a lot of hell because of their non-conference schedule. They have increased that tenfold without question of who they're playing.
But he's right, though. They're going to have to play better games in the non-conference because there's not a Texas and Oklahoma anymore, and those guys matter on your schedule. So he's right. And yes, the Big 12 has scheduled non-conference games just like everybody else in the country does. But, yeah, they might have to be a little bit more precise about having a name on that non-conference schedule that they might not normally have, just in the case that, the Big 12 is not some great conference. You need to bolster that resume as much as possible. So, yeah, it might be smart to have a Penn State in week 3 or something like that.
When we come